Yo, what's good everyone? Welcome back to Elbaf Part 6. In the last part, we saw Imu finally descend into the lower world for the very first time, completely turning the battlefield upside down. Loki stood face to face against Imu, while Luffy struggled to unlock his full power. At the same time, Sommers and Killingham awakened their terrifying omen powers, making the battle even more chaotic than before. But in today's video, the battle between Sommers and Killingham versus Zoro and Sanji finally kicks off. Luffy continues his clash against Nerona Imu. We uncover the heartbreaking connection between Gunko and Brook, and Oda drops even more insane lore surrounding Imu, Joy Boy, and a mysterious legendary figure from the distant past. Before we jump in, if you enjoy these kinds of in-depth One Piece videos, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're not sure yet, you can always change your mind later. So, let's jump straight into some absolute peak One Piece. We open right in the middle of an ongoing battle. Imu is facing off against both Loki and Ragnar, and he opens by directly acknowledging Ragnar, pointing out that he's been patiently waiting a long time for his chance at revenge, and asking him if that isn't correct. Ragnar squeaks in anger. Loki, meanwhile, is confused about what Imu is even referring to, and adds that he's never seen someone as resilient as Imu in his entire life. Imu's stance on the situation is cold and simple. Since Loki and Luffy have made it clear they won't be joining him through Domi Reversi, Imu decides right then that he's going to kill them. The same way he killed Duzan. That name, Duzan, gets dropped without any explanation, and the chapter just lets it hang there. Who Duzan was, nobody clarifies, and it feels very deliberately placed as a lore bomb for later. Loki throws everything he has at Imu in response. He launches his technique, Ragna Twinheim, which translates roughly to Iron Lightning Dual Martial World. It's a heavy move. But Imu doesn't flinch. Using his Omen hand sign, he transforms his glaive into something completely different. The weapon becomes covered in flaming spikes, and Imu calls it Gram. Written in kanji, it means Wrath Sword, but read in kana, it's Gram. The name comes from Old Norse, where Gram means wrath or ill-tempered. More specifically, Gram is the name of the legendary dragon-slaying magic sword from Norse mythology, the blade the hero Sigurd used to kill the dragon Fafnir. We then cut over to West Village, where things are not getting any better. The rain goddess, Zaza, the MMA apparition that Killingham summoned last chapter, is still pulling children into her water body one by one. 7 of the original 10 children have already been absorbed. Chopper is doing his best to manage the situation on the ground. The adults of the village, people who just went through serious trauma and are literally mid-blood transfusion right now, are starting to get up. Chopper tells them firmly not to strain themselves. Their bodies can't take it. If they push too hard in the state they're in, they could die. But Ripley speaks for all of them. She says she and the others would rather die than stand back and watch their children get taken. They don't care about their own lives at this point. Right at that moment, Sanji arrives at the village. He's closing in fast, but the dilemma hangs in the air. Zaza takes the form of a woman. Will he attack her directly? We then shift over to where the other Straw Hats are gathered: Nami, Usopp, Brooke, Frankie, and Jinbei. The scene first shows us the ice block that Gunkko is still trapped in. It looks completely undamaged, which suggests it can only be opened by Ragnar himself. The group is catching a moment to breathe and process everything that just happened. Usopp is the one who brings it up. He asks Brooke about the woman they encountered earlier, Gunkko. Usopp wants to know why Brooke ran toward her the moment he saw her. Nami follows up by asking if Gunkko is someone from Brooke's past, and whether she's an old enemy. Brooke says no, she's not an enemy, she's someone he had hoped to never see again. But now that he has, he's completely lost. If that really was the person he thinks it is, she should be 77 years old right now. The crew pushes back on that. They say then it can't be the same person, because Gunkko is a celestial dragon. She literally attacked Elbaf and took children. She's their enemy. Brooke acknowledges all of that, but he's still turning something else over in his mind. He remembers the last time he saw Princess Shuri, when she left the Asperia kingdom to depart for the Holy Land. Frankie takes a moment to check on the ice block. He tells the crew that Gunkko is still locked inside it, but whether she's actually alive in there is unclear. Usopp floats the idea that maybe Gunkko is just a celestial dragon, who happens to look like someone from Brooke's past. But Nami counters that it doesn't matter either way, because nothing changes the fact that she came here to lay siege to Elbaf. But Brooke brings up something that complicates the picture. He points out that it was Gunkko who loosened the arrow ropes during the battle. That one small act is what allowed them to escape. And he remembers her briefly telling him to run, like a completely different part of her was trying to protect them. In that moment, he realizes she did recognize him. That's when Brooke puts it together. He thinks Gunkko has 3 distinct personalities. The first is the celestial dragon, cold, cruel, the one who claimed children and demanded Brooke become her musician. The second is the one that surfaces in brief flashes, the one who helped them, the one who told Brooke to run. The third is the demon who appeared to be commanding the entire invading force from above. 3 separate personalities in one person. Nami wonders aloud if she's being controlled by something outside herself. Brooke says that back when he knew her in his kingdom, he never imagined such a thing was possible. But today, after seeing all of this, after Domi Reversi, he can't shake this feeling that's settled deep in his chest. Jinbei cuts through it with practicality. He tells Brooke they need a decision now, spare the woman or kill her. They can't make any move until Brooke settles this. And just like that, Brooke decides the only way forward is to look backward. He tells them the story goes back a long time, to when Gunkko was still just a child, and Brooke himself was young. He tells them where he came from, a kingdom that no longer exists. The Asperia kingdom, a nation built entirely around music, where instrument workshops lined every street. A country of luthiers, people who dedicated their lives to crafting instruments. And the flashback begins. West Blue, 70 years ago, 4 in the morning. Brooke is 20 years old, and this is actually the first time in the entire series we see what Brooke looked like before becoming a skeleton. No skull face, no glasses, just a young man's face, without even a scar on his head yet. He's standing somewhere near a port, and he is already singing at the top of his lungs. The song is the one this chapter is named after. It's about the sea and mornings and mermaids, about waking up to a brand new world and wanting to cross every ocean out there. About dreaming of meeting a mermaid someday, one that could take your soul away. The people of Asperia, trying to sleep at 4 in the morning, immediately start shouting at him to shut up. Someone yells to fire him from the assault forces. Someone else threatens to train a firearm on him. Brooke just laughs and keeps going. From somewhere nearby, a young girl's voice cuts through the chaos, cheering and waving. It's Princess Shuri, who the Straw Hats now know as Gunkko. She's calling out to Brooke excitedly, clearly thrilled by him. At 20 years old, Brooke is the captain of the assault forces, also called the escort convoy, of the Asperia kingdom, essentially head of royal security. And despite being this loud and musically obsessive and genuinely kind of ridiculous at 4 in the morning, the people of the kingdom clearly trust him. He's famous here. He's respected. Then we get the scene that ties back to something shown in chapter 1149. Brooke is walking hand in hand with a young girl, and they're singing Bink's Sake together. That girl is Shuri. Worth noting, she's already carrying a small sword on her back. She's been learning from Brooke. After their song, she asks if she worked hard today, and whether she's getting as strong as her mother. The moment Shuri mentions her mother, Brooke's eyes immediately turn into hearts. He says her mother is indeed incredibly strong. He talks about his admiration for Queen Candel, calling her his guiding light. 7-year-old Shuri, completely deadpan, calls Brooke out for having a crush on a married woman. Brooke's response is fully unbothered. He says, "Love is freedom." And then a voice drops into the garden like a thunderclap. Death penalty. For treason. Brooke spins around to find King Reuven of the Asperia kingdom, casually plucking grass from the garden. Brooke gets visibly startled and says, "That's a bit harsh." He instinctively calls Reuven Aniki. It's not about blood. It's closer to how the Frankie family talks about Frankie. But Brooke quickly catches himself and corrects it to His Majesty. Shuri runs over happily, calling out to Reuven as her father. Reuven looks at Brooke and directly asks him if he's planning to assassinate him. Brooke denies it, saying he'd simply wait until nature takes its own course, which is not a better answer. Shuri sees the tension and decides to solve it her own way. She tells Brooke to just give up on her mother and marry her when she grows up. Reuven shuts that down immediately, telling her that such cute things are what a daughter asks of her parents, not a soldier. Brooke, meanwhile, says he doesn't want a wife with a runny nose. Reuven tries to kick him in the head. For shooting down her daughter in front of him, Brooke dodges, and Shuri bursts out laughing. A guard comes in to break up the whole scene with urgent news. A gang is moving from the harbor straight toward town. They've outnumbered the battle convoy completely. Reinforcements from the castle won't make it in time. Their target is Queen Candle. The king confirms who's behind it. The Muron family, from a different island, who have been trying to get Candle for a long time. Reuven thinks of a simple idea, sending out a message not to leave the opera house, but to make things worse. The Denden Mushi inside the opera house are all set to silent mode. There's no way to get a warning to Candle. Terrified and visibly distressed, Shuri desperately turns to Brooke, urgently insisting that they have to do something to save her mother. Brooke pauses for just a moment, then casually mentions that he actually ran into the Muron family at the harbor earlier today. We cut to the Opera Avenue. The gang has arrived on horseback, open firing and not letting anyone through. At the opera house, a performance has just finished, and Queen Candle is inside, giving her compliments on the show. Outside, the Muron or Mulon family is already making demands. They're shouting for the queen to come out, threatening to open fire if she doesn't. Their leader is revealed to be Don Marlin or Muron, a man who apparently has feelings for Candle and has decided this is how you express them. This is the same character who was a former gangster from the West Blue and a member of the Fearsome Rocks Pirates. His goons make it clear to everyone around that Don Marlin has given them orders to shoot the queen if she refuses. They've cut off every possible escape route from the theater. Back at the barracks, Brooke is completely calm. He tells Reuven not to worry, calling him his royal bro. He says the queen is strong and won't be caught that easily. Both Reuven and Shuri are on the verge of tears, but Brooke stays calm. He points out that the Muron family didn't seem to realize something, that Brooke had already run into them at the port that morning. And then he says one more thing. He already cut them all down. Reuven and Shuri go completely still. Back at the opera house, we watch it unfold in real time. Gang members start dropping, one by one, collapsing with slash wounds across their bodies, wincing on the ground, completely taken out. The citizens watching start cheering as they piece together what just happened. Brooke's technique, the three-verse humming, arrow notch slash, his flash slash, had already been deployed. He cut down the entire gang before he ever walked into the barracks that morning. They just didn't realize they'd been hit until they started falling. No hockey, no devil fruit, pure swordsmanship. And Brooke could already delay his cuts back then, a truly unique style, and it was already at this level years ago. From the opera house, Queen Candle steps out. She's not what you'd expect. She's beautiful, but in a way that breaks a lot of the usual one-piece molds for women. She has a more realistic face, a princely and regal quality to her features, and she's dressed in elegant white. She carries the bearing of someone who was once the leader of the battle convoy herself. The narrator closes the flashback out with a proper introduction. More than 70 years ago, there were two stars in the Asperia kingdom. One was the former leader of the battle convoy and current queen of the kingdom, Candle. The other, though his music was poorly received by the people around him, was a master of the flash slash, so swift that the people he cut didn't even realize it had happened. The captain of the ambush squad, Brooke. During that time, the kingdom was at peace. The chapter ends there, with the editor's note simply reading, Brooke, in his younger days. The chapter opens with a narrative box. When Princess Shuri turned 14, word of her beauty spread far enough that princes from 5 neighboring kingdoms came to ask for her hand in marriage. 5 of them showed up. And every single one got demolished. Shuri defeated them all herself, and her announcement afterward was simple. She has no interest in weak men, and no interest in men who can't play music. We then cut to Brooke, who, at this point in the flashback, is 27 years old and holds the title of Guard Captain of the Kingdom of Asperia. He's with Shuri. He asks her if it's true that she took out all her suitors, and she confirms it with full pride. Then, she immediately pivots and asks Brooke if he likes strong women. She says she's gotten stronger and that she thinks she's gotten cuter too. Brooke agrees that she certainly has. Then she wonders aloud whether her chest will get bigger as she gets older. Brooke immediately goes into full dad mode and tells her to knock it off. That kind of thinking isn't dignified. In the very next breath, He walks over to some random women nearby and asks to see their panties. Shuri watches this happen in real time and throws her sword at his afro. But despite all of that, these two clearly have something real between them. They spend their days together singing a song called "We're All Bones When We Die." The lyrics go something like, "Cows and frogs, slaves and kings alike, in the end, we're nothing but bones." Shuri tells him she loves his music, and Brook replies warmly that His Majesty says the same thing. Then Shuri asks him straight, "You really love Papa, don't you? And Mama too?" Brook confirms it without any hesitation. He says King Reuven is his greatest benefactor, that if he had never met Shuri's father, by now he would just be bones. And that's the cue for the chapter to take us back even further. 16 years before this scene, Brook is 11 years old. He is living in a junkyard. Alone, he has nothing. He watches through the window of a nearby music school, seeing other kids learning on real instruments, and he can't get close. The moment he does, the villagers chase him off. They call him dirty, say he smells, call him a stain on the kingdom. The students are scared of him. He gets shooed away like a stray animal. So, Brook goes back to the junkyard and sings by himself. He's built his own violin out of scrap, out of literal garbage. He plays it alone. The lyrics are rough and honest. He sings about his parents and his little brother, about being hungry, about surviving on frogs and grasshoppers. And he sings that the king is to blame for all of it. Then, out of nowhere, a 21-year-old Reuven shows up. He's not dressed like royalty. Nothing about him signals who he is. He listens to Brook play and makes fun of how bad the lyrics are, but he genuinely compliments the instrument. Brook tells him he made it himself out of a glass bottle and some wires. Reuven says it has a freeing vibe to it. Brook figures this scruffy older guy must be some kind of fan and calls him Mister. Reuven corrects him. He's not a mister, he's just 21. Brook looks at him and goes, "Yeah, but your face looks really old," and then does his signature laugh. Reuven laughs too, genuinely caught off guard by how weird that laugh is. Brook then asks if he can just call him Big Bro. Reuven doesn't object. They both laugh together, and that's where it starts. That's the friendship. As a gesture, Brook decides to cook for Reuven. The meal is grasshoppers, a frog, and some curry powder that Brook stole off a marine ship docked at the port. His whole logic is that curry powder makes anything taste like curry regardless of what's actually in the bowl. He tells Reuven about the stolen powder and then laughs, saying, well, it's not really a secret anymore now that he's told him. Reuven takes the bowl, and for a second, inside his head, we see a glimpse of the life he's used to. Elaborate, fancy spreads at the palace. And those meals always came with something attached, like being seated next to a prestigious woman clearly selected to be his future wife. Arranged marriage territory. He snaps back to the moment, looks at this bowl of curry-spiced frog and grasshopper stew. Brook notices his expression and asks if Reuven is so moved by the meal that he's about to cry. Reuven thinks to himself that he can't believe he's still in Asperia. But out loud he just tells Brook he's a bit tired, but that he's genuinely happy to have this. And then he eats it. It tastes awful. Brook asks if it's so good he's convulsing. Reuven says it's great. Brook says they'll go back to singing afterward. Reuven offers to pay Brook for the meal. Brook refuses flat out. They're friends. It's his treat. They're both going through hard times. After that, the two of them just keep hanging out, regularly, playing music, talking, just existing in each other's company. Brook has found someone who shows up for him. Reuven has found a place where he can just be a person without the weight of his title pressing down on him. Neither of them is getting anything transactional out of this. It's just genuine. Now here's where things shift. One day down at Celloport, one of Asperia's harbor towns, we see a violin being held by someone while a voice shouts to load the instruments onto the cargo ship and handle them with care. Then we see blood on the floor. And it's Brook's. Brook has been grabbed by Marines. He's coughing, already roughed up, telling them this is a mistake. He doesn't know anything about what they're accusing him of. The Marine officer isn't hearing it. He tells Brook to stop lying. He says the gangsters hired Brook to smuggle their product and wants to know where he hid it. Here's the situation. The Mulan family has been using couriers to smuggle drugs through the port and attempted to smuggle drugs to corrupt Marines. The Marines paid an informant. The informant pointed at Brooke, and now they've decided he's the guy. The officer even tells him they're not talking about normal curry powder here. They're talking about the whereabouts of the drugs. Brooke has nothing to say because he genuinely knows nothing. So he does the only thing that feels right. He starts singing, right there, battered and bleeding. He sings, "We're all bones when we die." The Marines tell him to shut up. Brooke knows what's coming. He knows this is probably the end. He says a quiet goodbye to his big bro and to a stray dog. The Marines have already decided he's guilty, and now they're stuck because they've beaten him up during the interrogation. So the decision gets made to just kill him, then go deal with the gangsters themselves. Brooke keeps singing, sitting there with his injuries, waiting for whatever comes next. Everyone ends up the same, doesn't matter the status, the wealth, the title, same ending for all of us. Then the doors burst open. Reuven is there. Brooke calls out to him with everything he has, "Big bro." Reuven immediately runs to Brooke and pulls him into a hug, telling him he's so glad he's alive. And right behind Reuven is Candel and the full battle convoy of Asperia. The Marines are calling Reuven Prince. That's the first time Brooke actually hears it attached to his friend. Prince. The convoy members tell Reuven to step back and let them handle the situation. Reuven refuses. He says he cannot forgive these Marines for what they did to his friend. Then the report comes in from the convoy. The real Mulan family couriers have been captured. The actual criminals are in custody. Brooke had absolutely nothing to do with any of it. He genuinely was just a kid who liked curry powder. But the convoy members lay out the problem. These Marines are backed by the world government. Confronting them directly means friction between Asperia and the WG. Reuven hears that and doesn't flinch. He says that a government that protects soldiers like these is a sign that the world itself is heading toward collapse. He turns to Candel and asks for her confirmation on what they're doing. Candel's response is straightforward. She is nothing more than his devoted blade, and she will always be by his side. The Marines try to pull rank and intimidate them using world government authority. It doesn't work. Reuven calls them trash. Then he and Candel step in and take them down. Watching the exchange unfold, Brooke is left in awe of Reuven's swordsmanship. And then word spreads about the incident. The crowd talks about how Candel saved the country again. They absolutely love her. Cut to the Asperia Palace. Everything has settled. Brooke is bandaged up, lying in a bed inside the palace. Reuven is sitting at his bedside. When Brooke wakes up, Reuven tells him he's glad he's okay. Candel is in the room as well, serving them tea. She's not entirely warm about the situation. She gives Reuven a firm lecture about understanding his own position as a prince and not running off into danger. Reuven just casually replies that he'll keep it in mind. Then Brooke asks quietly, "So his big bro was a prince this whole time?" Reuven apologizes. He says he never meant to deceive him, he just had too much fun. The time they spent together in the junkyard was real, and he didn't want to ruin it by revealing who he was. He also tells Brooke not to tell anyone about the stolen curry powder because that part is still embarrassing. Candel then mentions that every single time Reuven snuck out of the castle, the entire convoy went into a full panic trying to track him down. She had absolutely no idea he was in a junkyard eating grasshoppers with a cute, adorable kid. Brooke very much enjoys hearing himself described that way. He gets a nosebleed on the spot. Candel gets concerned immediately and asks if his wounds are still that deep. Brooke tells her not to worry about it. Then Reuven makes his announcement. Brooke is coming to live in the palace. He's going to be Reuven's personal favorite musician. He gets a real room in the barracks, actual instruments to play, and a spot at the music school. And Reuven says it with complete sincerity. He genuinely believes that one day Brooke will be a star of this kingdom and bring life to the palace. Brooke starts crying. A narrative box drops. A star is born in Asperia. Now we're right back in the Asperia flashback. It opens with King Reuven giving Candel a very specific task: make Brooke her page, and teach him proper manners, and how to speak like a civilized person. Good luck with that one. We cut to Brooke wandering through the royal palace, completely distracted. He walks through the halls, muttering that the palace has a lot of cute babes, counting under his breath, "Beauty 1, 2, as he passes the palace women one by one. Candel tells him to cut it out. Brooke turns to her and cheerfully says she's still his number one. Candel, already exhausted, reminds him that it's Lady Candel, because he's her page now. Brooke barely processes that before immediately spinning around to ask a nearby woman to show him her panties. Candel shrieks and scolds him right there. They end up at the music school. Candel looks at his uniform and asks if he hates it. Brooke launches into his whole thing. If he gets too used to rigid structure, he won't be able to make good music anymore. That said, he does mention he's looking forward to rocking a Guard Corps uniform someday. Meanwhile, the other convoy members are watching all of this happen and complaining to each other. They're jealous. They can't believe a random kid gets to be Lady Candel's page. We cut to the training grounds. Brooke and Candel are sparring with swords as she teaches him swordsmanship. In the middle of their training session, Brooke brings up a question, asking Candel what type of man she likes. Candel corrects him first. It's Lady Candel. Then she answers. She admits there is someone, but says he's completely out of her reach. That's why she trained so hard with the sword in the first place, to stay as close to that person as possible. Brooke tells her that, if that's the case, she should dress more like a woman instead of a man. Candel replies that there's no need for that. Just being by his side is enough for her. Brooke starts putting two and two together, asks if she means by staying near him she wants to be closer to that someone. Candel immediately shouts, obviously it's not him she's talking about. Later, as the two of them walk through town, Brooke decides this is a great time to ask whether her underwear is also men's underwear. Candel flatly says no. Brooke asks if he can see her panties then. Candel yells his name and tells him his language is not improving at all. She says if he's going to ask for anything, he at least needs to use proper honorifics when making a request. Brooke takes this as a technical challenge. He switches into full formal mode, uses every honorific correctly, and asks in the most pristine polite language possible if she would be so kind as to show him her panties. Candel hammers him in the head. She screams, no. Then she sighs and tells him that being polite is not a loophole. You still need basic decency on top of good manners, and she is going to hammer that into him personally. Brooke snaps to attention. Then I'll work super hard. Candel, composed again, delivers what is essentially her entire life philosophy. Strength and manners are proportional. Time passes. Now Brooke is sitting with Princess Shuri and telling her about the kingdom's history, specifically about Lady Candel. He tells her there isn't a soul around who doesn't admire her. Then he gets into it, the story of a time that genuinely shook the whole country. A world government ship drifted ashore in Asperia. A celestial dragon had arrived, first time in Asperia's history. The whole kingdom was thrown into an uproar. This was a level of authority nobody here had ever dealt with before. And Candel, the son of the country as Brooke calls her, was clearly affected by the stress of it all. After the celestial dragon left, she ended up bedridden for several months. The mood across the entire country crashed. Brooke laughs his signature yo-ho-ho at the memory, then immediately corrects himself. It's not funny, he says. It was exactly like watching the sun set. But then came the news that turned everything around. Reuven, rugged, beloved Prince Reuven, ascended to the throne as king. And at the same time, he announced his marriage to Candel. Brooke says, the celebration that swept through Asperia was like a live concert. The whole nation was electric. And then, not long after, Princess Shuri was born. The kingdom just completely bubbled over with joy. Brooke gets swept up in the memory and starts mimicking the crowds from that day. Show us her face. Cute. Mother's victory. He catches himself going off track and laughs. The point is, Reuven and Candel saved him, so he would throw his life away for either of them without a second's hesitation. They're his great benefactors. Shuri, listening to this whole thing, goes mommy and daddy, basically teasing him for how much he gushes about her parents. Then she cuts to the real question, what would Brooke do if she herself were in danger? Brooke says obviously he'd give his life for her too, without a heartbeat of hesitation. Shuri asks him, is it only because she's their daughter? That one catches Brooke off guard. He hesitates. Just briefly. Then he says no, he'd save her because of who she is. Shuri, totally unimpressed, tells him to say it with his whole chest next time and not hesitate like that. Then she looks away and goes a little quiet. Brooke, reading the mood perfectly, produces a candy out of nowhere and holds it in front of her. She immediately lights up. What follows is a happy series of flashback moments. Shuri training with Brooke, sitting up on his shoulder, the two of them just spending time together. We see her glancing over at her father. We see Reuven and Candel watching them both from a distance with warm expressions. Then there's a scene where Shuri gets injured during training, and Brooke rushes over with first aid in a panic. He tells her that if she ever wants to vent her frustration about being cooped up under her parents' watch, she can always do it through a song. And that's actually where the chapter title comes from, the song, "Y'all Better Buzz Off." Brooke strums his guitar and demonstrates, "Leave me alone." Shuri laughs and says that the lyrics sound kind of weird. Brooke explains it's a dialect from a western country called Kamagata. The full line goes, "I'm not a puppy lured by candy, I'm not a kid, you know." Shuri is still laughing. Good days. But the good days don't last. The chapter shifts its tone here, and it shifts it hard. When Shuri is around 15, a strange mist rolls into Asperia. At first it's just fog, light, passing, but it doesn't leave. It sits over the island for half a year, and while it sits there, it starts corroding things. First, the instruments. The craftsmanship that Asperia built its entire economy on, the strings, the woodwork, all of it starts deteriorating from the inside out. The music that generated their income, their heavenly tribute, their entire identity as a kingdom, it all starts going bad. And then, the mist thickens into a full smog. We see Brooke mid-song, trying to keep morale up, singing about delivering music to people, and then doubling over coughing. He picks up his guitar and the strings give out a horrible grinding, warped sound. Something is deeply wrong. Candel keeps insisting that the fog will clear, but people start getting sick. Their lungs give out. Tens of thousands suffer, hundreds die. Among the dead is Candel, the son of Asperia, the woman who trained Brooke, the queen who married Reuven against all the odds, the person the entire kingdom revolved around. She's gone. Brooke, Reuven, and Shuri grieve her together. The whole kingdom does. Meanwhile, inside the palace, an official is delivering terrible financial news to King Reuven. With their music economy collapsed, they cannot calculate the heavenly tribute. They have no way to pay the world government this year. Outside, Shuri is still doing her combat drills. Brooke watches her and notices something. She sometimes moves like she's already seen what's coming. Shuri grins and says she wants to become like her mother, like Candel. Brooke thinks that's admirable, but a princess fighting on the front lines would destroy her father with worry. Speaking of the king, Shuri brings up that Reuven has been visibly stressed lately. Brooke tells her he already has a rough idea why, but there's nothing they can do about it. He'll simply follow the king to the very end. Then Shuri asks him something out of the blue. Didn't he want to become a pirate? She knows about that dream. Brooke says he's perfectly happy to set his dreams aside until he's repaid his debt to the king. Shuri, completely straight-faced, says she'll come with him when that day comes. Brooke says she can't. Shuri says she's going. Brooke says absolutely not. And then Reuven calls an assembly. The king stands before his people and says it plainly. The enemy will be the world government. There is going to be a war. Everyone around the room freezes. Brooke says understood, immediately, no questions. The other convoy members, though, ask why. Reuven explains it without softening a single word. Because Asperia cannot pay the heavenly tribute this year, the world government has offered an alternative. 1,000 citizens, handed over to the Holy Land as slaves. And slavery in the Holy Land is, for all practical purposes, a death sentence. Reuven says it straight. He has no intention of selecting which of his people to sacrifice. The government's armada will arrive in 2 months. The kingdom erupts. People are terrified. Someone brings up non-affiliated countries, lawless zones, whole nations disappearing. One person mentions that just recently, a country vanished somewhere in the West Blue. They ask their commander Brooke, "Is this already the end?" Brooke doesn't let that sit. He picks up his deteriorating guitar and starts singing. He talks about carnage-filled seas, about authorities too scared to even go near certain places, about soldiers called samurai and citizens called giants. He asks what the big deal is about bees. They sting once and they run. He's pointing at the kinds of people in this world who fight back and actually win. Then he strums one final line. "We have nothing left to be taken anyway." The whole kingdom laughs, a real laugh. People loosen up. Whatever comes next, they're choosing this. The 2 months pass. The world government doesn't negotiate, they invade. It's swift, and it's massive. Far more soldiers than anyone anticipated, landing from the North Port. The convoy scrambles to hold them back. They're outnumbered badly. The entire kingdom starts going up in flames. Brooke is fighting everywhere, cutting through enemies in the burning streets, singing the song as he goes, "Leave me alone, leave me alone." The same playful tune now turned into a furious battle cry. Then word comes in, the enemy has breached the palace. A memory flashes through Brooke's mind as he hears that, an argument between Shuri and Reuven, Shuri demanding to know why she can't fight in the battle. Reuven shutting it down completely, furious. If the government captures her, the entire kingdom becomes their leverage. It's out of the question. Brooke snaps back to the present and prays Shuri isn't doing something reckless right now, and pushes toward the palace as fast as he can. He fights his way through the familiar halls. He passes the garden he and Shuri used to walk through. He passes the place where he and Reuven used to play as kids, where they fished together. All of it is on fire. He's panting, slashing through whoever stands in his way, muttering lines from the song under his breath, half grief, half fury, about how this place, their home, won't be easy to take from them. He bursts into the throne room and stops dead. Reuven is on the floor, dead, and he has demonic wings and horns, his body warped by Domi Reversi even in death. Standing over him is Shuri, and Shuri doesn't look like Shuri anymore. She has wings coming out of her back, horns on her head, her eyes are glowing. She's been hit by Domi Reversi too. Hovering above the entire scene is a massive bird-shaped shadow, which looks to be just like St. Marcus Mars, looming in his full Itsumade Zoan form. And sitting near the throne is a second mysterious figure, someone in what looks like a holy knight's uniform, smoking a cigar, just watching. Shuri turns to Brooke. She smiles. She licks her lips. And she tells him the war is over now, and that he doesn't need to worry anymore. He should be glad. We open on a full-scale battle. Ships crashing into each other, explosions lighting up the coastline, people screaming. This is a kingdom fighting with everything it has against the world government, because independence is the only chance at survival these people have left. Back inside the palace, Brooke is standing in the throne room of Asperia, and his brain has basically stopped working. King Reuven is dead on the floor. Shuri is standing there. And there are 2 other figures in the room with them. One of those figures is a massive looming silhouette, and it looks unmistakably similar to what happened at God Valley, when Saturn and Imu merged. Except this time, it's Imu merged with Mars, his head rising from the top of the form with black flames churning below him, just watching Brooke from above. Brooke doesn't freeze, though. He sprints straight to Reuven's body, screaming for a medic, completely refusing to accept that the king is already dead. Memories flash through his mind. Their very first meeting when Reuven found him as a kid in a junkyard, Brooke calling him his big bro. He keeps begging Reuven to hang on, crying, completely in denial. Imu quietly observes all of this from where he stands, and then closes the throne room door. He says it was an inconvenient time to be interrupted. And then, just like that, the massive figure disappears, leaving nothing but black flames where it stood. Shuri then tells Brooke plainly that the person he's crying over is gone, referring to Reuven as that guy. Brooke snaps out of his grief for a moment and draws his sword. He demands she not refer to Reuven that way. Then he points his blade at the mysterious man still standing in the room and asks who he is and what he did to Shuri, because Brooke is absolutely certain from the bottom of his soul that Shuri would never do something like this on her own. He's known her since the day she was born. There's nothing about her he doesn't know. And then Shuri tells him she is the child of a world noble. Reuven was not her biological father. Brooke completely refuses to accept it. He tells her she is Reuven's daughter, and that is a fact. But Shuri says there's no proof she was ever truly his. Brooke fires back that biological relations don't matter when it comes to the bond between a parent and a child. Shuri replies that it does matter, it's life-changing, because she should have been raised as a celestial dragon. She spent 16 years of her life in ignorance of who she actually was, and that makes her furious. And then she says the thing that really cuts deep. Reuven lied to everyone. The world nobles were never coming for slaves. They came for her specifically. Reuven hid that truth and let his own people die in a war fought to protect one person, her. She calls Reuven a good-for-nothing king who led his people to ruin for nothing, so she killed him to end the war. Brooke says that without Reuven, Asperia has no legitimate leadership, it'll collapse into a lawless wasteland. Shuri says that's none of her concern. The mysterious man in the room speaks up at this point. He addresses Brooke directly, mentioning that he actually remembers him, because there used to be a kid with an afro among Candel's servants back when he used to visit. Brooke doesn't recognize him though, since he was never actually allowed near this man when he came around, but then Brooke looks at his eyes, and he sees it immediately. This man has the exact same mismatched bipolar irises as Shuri. This is Manmayer Guru, a knight of God. Guru says he wouldn't normally travel all the way out to a place like this just to collect a child, but those bipolar irises are extremely rare and Imu values them highly. He starts to say something more, that he himself was never able to awaken a certain ability, but maybe Shuri can, and then Imu cuts him off right there. We don't get to hear what that ability is. Guru just tells Shuri to wrap it up. She walks toward Brooke with her sword. Brooke is in tears. He's saying this can't be real, this has to be a dream. He's begging her, telling her this isn't who she is, that he knows her, he was with her from the moment she was born. Shuri looks at him coldly and says she finds it pathetic that he's crying. She tells him she needs stronger protection than what he could ever offer, and when she goes to the Holy Land, she won't need him anymore. Brooke looks at her and then at Reuven's body on the floor and realizes he couldn't save his big bro. He remembers Shuri as the little girl he thought of as an angel, but the person standing in front of him looks like a demon. Before he can process any more of it, Shuri raises her sword and uses Gavotte Bond en Avant, the exact same sword technique Brooke himself uses today, and drives it straight through his head. Then she walks out of the castle with Guru without looking back. Brooke wakes up sometime later, covered in bandages, with his men standing around him, all visibly shaken. A medic explains that it's miraculous a sword went straight through his head but somehow missed his major blood vessels and brainstem, allowing him to survive. Brooke ignores the explanation and changes the subject, asking about Reuven. They hesitate. He demands that they tell him, and they finally do. They lost. Reuven is dead. They also tell him they watched Shuri leave on a world government ship and that many of the citizens have already fled Asperia entirely. Brooke breaks down completely. The weight of Reuven dying right in front of him, and Shuri being the one who did it, and then leaving without a second glance, all of it hits at once. This is the wound that never actually closed. Back in the present, Brooke finishes telling his crewmates everything. He explains that back then he had no idea devil fruits even existed, so when he watched the king get murdered and saw Shuri looking like something out of a nightmare, his mind just filed it away as a hallucination. Something trauma cooked up to protect him. It was the only way he could keep carrying that memory without completely falling apart. But now, after everything they've witnessed in Elbaf, after watching people around them get twisted into these demonic domi reversi forms, he's starting to reconsider. Maybe what he saw that day was real after all. And then Brooke has his moment. He's in tears, and he actually gets down into a full dogeza, bowing completely to the ground in front of his crew, and asks them, just one more time, if he's allowed to believe in Princess Shuri. If she really was a victim in all of this. Just like he was. He wants to save her, and he's asking if he can borrow everyone's strength to do it. Nobody hesitates. The crew agrees immediately, no questions asked, and they start throwing around ideas for how to break Gunkko free from the ice Ragnir has her trapped in. Brook doesn't wait around to hear the plan though. He's already gone, taking off on his own the second he gets the answer he needed. What none of them have figured out yet is that not even Imu was able to break that ice. The scene then cuts over to Luffy, who is at the Walrus School, and has just absolutely demolished a full feast to get his strength back after being drained earlier. He looks at his hands, feels the power surging back through him, and decides that whatever new enemy just showed up is Elbaf's enemy, which makes them his enemy too. With all this recovered energy, he genuinely doesn't think he can lose to this guy. He heads out. Back on the battlefield, Loki and Imu are still fighting. Loki has dropped out of his dragon form by this point and is going at Imu more directly. He calls Imu out for using the kidnapped children of Elbaf as leverage, saying it's a coward's tactic. Imu doesn't even flinch at that. He turns it around and asks Loki if he's really ignorant of why that specific strategy was chosen. Then he explains, 800 years ago, the giants lost the war back then because they couldn't stop themselves from trying to save their children. That's exactly why Imu is doing the same thing now. He knows how giants think. He's weaponizing the same instinct that broke them the first time. Loki has no idea what Imu is talking about. He's clearly hearing about this for the first time. Imu keeps going, saying the nature of a race doesn't change no matter how many centuries go by. As long as the children are in his hands, the giants are his to control. History is going to repeat itself the exact same way. And right in the middle of that monologue, Luffy shows up. He comes in right behind Loki, doesn't bother with introductions, just winds up and lands a full hockey-infused punch directly into Imu's face. Same energy as when he punched St. Charlos at Sabaody all those years ago. And he tells Imu to get out of Elbaf. We pick up exactly where last chapter ended. Luffy just connected a punch on Imu in his base form and sent the man flying. Loki is standing there completely shocked watching this unfold. There is red lightning crackling around from the impact. It is a genuinely big deal. Luffy in base form hit Imu hard enough to send him flying. But here is the thing, Imu, even while getting blown away, is already setting things up. He forms small omen flames in both hands midair as he is being launched back. Loki, injured as he is, acknowledges the hit but makes sure everyone knows that Luffy only pulled that off because of the damage Loki had already dealt Imu first. Luffy looks over at Loki and tells him he should seriously take a break because the man is in genuinely rough shape. Loki is not happy about that at all. He growls back that even asking him that shows Luffy has no idea who he is talking to. Meanwhile, Luffy notices the black flame that has landed on his jacket. It does not burn him, but he cannot get it off, and he's clearly puzzled by what exactly this thing is. Now here is what those omen flames Imu launched midair actually do. The one that landed on Loki flies toward his chest and starts moving on its own. And then it starts talking. It says something like, "Get on top of the cloud," and references the exact spot where Imu's sword had already pierced Loki earlier in the fight. Loki is alarmed, asking what this thing is and why it is spreading across his chest. The flame was functioning as a targeting marker the whole time. Then Imu follows up with a named attack, Stigma, also called the demonic sword. It is a massive aura blade that drives straight through Loki at precisely the spot the flame had marked. A giant sword of demonic energy going clean through the chest of one of Elbaf's strongest warriors. Now we cut to the Straw Hats. They have found where Gunkko, Princess Shuri, is frozen inside Ragnir's ice block and are trying everything to get her out. Nami hits it with a lightning attack. Jinbei, Usopp, and Frankie are all there too, trying to physically move or break it. Nothing works. Frankie wonders out loud if it might actually be diamond. Both Frankie and Brooke try touching it to figure out what they are even dealing with, but neither of them can feel it properly at all. It just will not budge. Then Loki comes crashing in from above, blasted by the stigma attack, slamming directly into the ice block with Ragnar coming down right alongside him. The giant hammer hits the ice and nearly flattens everyone on the ground, and the whole group is scrambling trying to get out of the way. They look over at Loki and immediately notice the hole in his chest from stigma, and the group starts wondering if Loki just got taken out entirely. Ragnar then detransforms back into its small squirrel form and scrambles over to Loki, visibly distressed about its master. And then something interesting happens in all the chaos. The ice block that Ragnar just slammed into starts melting, and it is going down fast. Brooke, who has been wanting to reach Shuri this entire time, finally has his opening. Gunkko is about to be freed. Back to Luffy. He has his own flame issue to deal with, the omen that landed on his jacket. The moment he puts together what these flames do and what is coming, he yanks the jacket off and throws it aside. The stigma sword follows the flame marker wherever it goes, so it chases the jacket instead of going through him. Smart read in the middle of a fight, and he did it fast enough to matter. Now we shift to another part of Elbaf entirely, the Sea Cloud port of the Western Village. Zoro has just arrived and comes face to face with Saint Shepherd Sommers, one of the 3 Holy Night demons. Sommers recognizes Zoro from the village and asks what he is doing showing up now, whether he came looking for a beating. Zoro, standing on the bowsprit of the ship, calls him out plainly for ruining their reunion with their old friends. Sommers brushes that off and says they are only there to pick up 10 or 20 children. His associate is bringing them over from the village to the port any minute, and then they are gone. Zoro gives him a look and says that is quite the coincidence then, because his crewmate is also in that village right now, and Sommers' associate is not going to be the one making it back to the port. Sommers asks why that would be. Zoro's answer is simple, because Sanji is going to kill Killingham before he can take those kids. Sommers fires his thorn sword up at Zoro from below, and tells him that neither Zoro nor anyone else has any idea how powerful the Holy Knights have gotten with Imu's omen buff behind them. Now we are at the Western Village. Killingham is there with Zaza, his MMA creature, and they are actively in the process of kidnapping children. This is where Sanji shows up. He slides in quietly, takes in the whole situation, and starts running through it analytically in his head. He has 3 problems, and none of them have an easy answer. Problem 1. There is a creature bigger than the giants carrying the children away. He cannot just charge in and attack directly because a fight at that scale risks the kids getting hurt in the middle of it. Problem 2. That creature, Zaza, looks like a woman, and Sanji does not hit women. That is not changing, not now, not ever. Problem 3. The children's mothers are right there, injured, crying, desperately trying to get their kids back anyway. Sanji cannot stand there and watch women cry and do nothing about it. Every option is closing on him. But then he looks at Killingham, who is a man, and realizes the answer. Killingham is the ringleader, the cause of all of this. If Sanji takes him down, he does not need to touch Zaza at all. He also figures that even if the giants lose track of him, Killingham himself cannot outrun Sanji. Sanji charges straight at him. As they clash, Sanji admits that Killingham is genuinely tough. Killingham immediately corrects him on one thing. There's a big difference between being tough and being immortal. He declares that he is the latter. The Holy Knights are immortal. He tells Sanji he cannot beat him. But then Killingham himself confirms Sanji's logic is correct. He admits it openly. If he goes down, his ability disappears along with him. Then he tells Sanji to go ahead and try. He orders Zaza to keep collecting the children, though Killingham himself seems at least a little rattled by his own creation. Sanji tells him directly that he knows what Killingham's weakness is. He knows the Holy Knight's weakness. Killingham's expression shifts. He goes cold and tells Sanji that now things are interesting. He asks Sanji plainly if he knows how to use Conqueror's Haki, because that is the one thing that can actually beat them. Then he tells him to go ahead and do it. The fight starts. Killingham goes at Sanji with his trident and sends him crashing into one of the giant-scale buildings. And in that moment, we get the flashback. This is the continuation of a conversation that started back in chapter 1152 and was cut off before the important part got said. Gaban, Zoro, and Sanji are together. Gaban had been telling Zoro how his Conqueror's Haki can support Luffy as a 4 emperor. Sanji is listening, and then he asks the question directly. What about me? I do not have Conqueror's haki. Gaban tells him he does. Or at least, the potential is there, he should have it. But then he identifies what is actually in the way. Sanji carries a burden of painful uncertainty about himself, a deep self-doubt rooted in his past, and it is holding back what he is actually capable of. Then Gaban lays it out plainly. If Sanji truly wants to see Luffy become king of the pirates, then Sanji himself has to become a king. Sanji thinks about that, and you can immediately see where the conflict lies. He deeply hates kings, particularly because he despises his own royal lineage and the cruel ruling class mentality. The entire Vinsmoke situation, his father, Vinsmoke Judge, and what that childhood looked like, all left him with a bone-deep resentment of kingship and everything it represents. His own past made him hate the concept of being a king so deeply that it has blocked what he was always supposed to have. Otherwise, he would have already awakened it by now. Then the final page. Luffy has activated Gear 5. The full transformation. He is standing before Imu, the two of them finally face to face in an actual fight. And unlike every other time Luffy has gone Gear 5, he is not laughing, he is not grinning or turning everything into a game, he is completely serious, angry, even. Imu looks at him and says, "So you've finally appeared, Joy Boy." Luffy fires back immediately. He does not want to be called Joy Boy, or any of these names that are not his. His name is Luffy, and he is going to be the king of the pirates. The chapter ends on Saint Nerona Imu vs Monkey D. Luffy. Alright everyone, that's it for Elbaf Part 6. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more in-depth One Piece content. Part 7 will be out once a few more chapters have dropped, so stay tuned. Until then, thanks for watching.